Thanks very much for coming to this presentation on business intelligence and merchant reporting. My name is Fred Speckeen. I'm CEO of a company called Advanced E-commerce Research Systems. You may know us as Terapeak if you've been in the e-commerce market as a merchant for the last 5 or 6 years. We spoke a year ago. At that time, we're introducing a product we called Terapeak for PayPal. And this was a product that we were specifically approached by PayPal about because PayPal was interested in what could be done with merchant analytics to provide real-time merchant analytics. That is to say, let me see my business in real time. Don't make me wait for a CSV file till the end of the month and then import it into Excel. And if you're like me, you hack around and get tired of it before you get any real information. So instead, why not take advantage of what we have in the e-commerce world, which is a lot of data and available by API. And let's pull that down and let's show merchants what their business is doing, kind of give them a pulse, if you will, of what's happening in their business. So we've been working on this project closely with PayPal for well over a year. And you'll find it in the PayPal apps experience. Just give a little bit of background on how we see e-commerce data and what we've learned so far, just to share that with you. E-commerce data is by definition voluminous. An example would be with a product that we have, Terapeak for eBay, which allows eBay sellers to analyze pricing trends on any given number of items on eBay. Can analyze trends, make strategies in terms of what kind of products I ought to be selling, what types of products I ought to be getting out of, what other products are complementary to the ones I'm selling now. These are the kind of decisions that sellers make using Terapeak for eBay. We have, in various forms of Terapeak for eBay, probably, in aggregate, probably over 40 to 50,000 subscribers to those products. On eBay, in order to provide the kind of analysis that we do on a daily basis, we're taking in over 10 million transactions a day, 10 million transactions a day, about 30 to 40 attributes deep. We're also with another product we're doing, which is the new eBay listing analytics service, which is right inside the seller experience. You can think of it as Google Analytics for your eBay listings. We also get views and clicks. It's about 300 million pieces of data in that every day. Browsing, watching, those kind of attributes. And in addition, the item specifics themselves range, well, you can say from antiques to new automobiles. I mean, it's really the full range of everything that's on eBay. That's a huge amount of data. And inside that data, there's a lot of answers. First of all, you need a question, then you need a physical way of actually handling the data to get to the answer. When we talk about PayPal merchants and giving merchants a view of their businesses, you often have merchants who are working on multiple sites. They sell in multiple locations, use multiple currencies, they have multiple SKUs, and multiple, often, payment services, even in the form of just multiple PayPal accounts. If I'm a merchant and I want to see my business, I want to see my whole business. And I want to see my whole business in terms of the aggregation of that and item specifics and these kinds of things. We'll talk a little bit more about that because, as you know, payment gateway data doesn't provide all the specifics you might need. As I mentioned, you need to have some questions. And this is where, from the developer point of view, or I probably bring more of a product manager point of view because I'm not a developer. I have real developers here who can answer real questions. But merchants need to know what I should be selling, to whom should I be selling, who do I target, what should I be paying for inventory, how am I doing relative to my competitors, is my marketing working, how much did I sell this month, this week, even today, am I on track with my goals, and how can I minimize my fees? I mean, these are just a few sample questions, and if you spend time with merchants and look at their workflow and the kind of questions that come up, these are the things that we learn. We also know that buried in all of the data that's out there, in their own transaction data and on marketplace data, we know that the answers are buried in all of that data. We also know one other thing, is that unlike business and any other time, these data are available in real time. And if I, as a merchant, can get real trends, real-time information, I can make greater profit. Whoops. So that's key. And I mean, the whole evolution toward real-time in commerce is something that's really, it is an evolution. It's not a revolution. I think Thomas Edison was the first one to actually set up a wire link between a trading floor and an office, a brokerage office. And that's in the last century. So we've been moving toward real time. I guess the difference is now, though, is that an e-commerce merchant, as small as they may be, can now get big company analytics if they can get access to that data. So this is revolutionary. It's really levels the playing field, as they say. Obviously, there's technical challenges to handling large data, and as we provide products that are particularly targeted at handling large amounts of data and giving answers, that's what we do best. But just some issues that come up. Obviously, there's multiple terabytes of data. It's happening in real time. Often it's in multiple locations, even within a marketplace or within a payment provider. You may have to go to different places and make different kinds of API calls to get the data. And then you have the challenge of joining it together, which, again, isn't trivial, but that's just a precursor to even being able to do anything useful with it. And as I say, the data is accumulating. It's accumulating in real time, and it's global. And for the merchant, if you think about them, which is not really a technical challenge. Oops, I'm not going to get that button right. From the merchant's point of view, I really have limited time. I don't want to spend time looking at data. I just want answers. I don't have the necessary systems and skills. I mean, myself as an e-commerce merchant, I'm not a great Excel user. I don't have time to develop reports. I don't want to create graphs and all of those kinds of things. Just give me answers. And in fact, give me answers to questions that I often don't even know which questions to ask. If you can give me insight that I hadn't thought of, I may actually be able to do better, but I may not have thought of it on my own. This is where the developer really has a challenge. Get inside the head of the customer and try to anticipate those questions. And most importantly, and this is kind of an interesting point, we'll stay with this just for a moment, my questions change and fixed reports can fail me. Again, if we think about what e-commerce and payment providers like PayPal who have APIs allow you to do, is you can get access to data, and as a user, you can drill into that data yourself if you have the right tools. In the old paradigm, companies that I worked for before, if you wanted to get sales data or analysis of country data and sales in countries, for example, you contact your business analyst. And the business analyst goes to the IT department. The IT department stops what it's doing and it pulls data for that analyst. The analyst then gets the data and they have to put it into Excel or a database, and then they start building reports for you. That's all great. 3 weeks later, at the board meeting, you have the analysis. And then a few questions get asked and you realize, geez, I have to go back and ask that analyst for a whole new pull of the data, and a whole new process has to begin to answer a new question. So ideally, the neat thing about e-commerce is that all the data is out there. It's in different locations. So in other words, you as a merchant, if you can get access to it through tools like ours, you don't have to host it. And if you can get tools like ours that allow you to drill ad hoc into it, you can create your own reports, then you are doing that work. Now, arguably, some business analysts or merchants are not business analysts, so the job of the developer here becomes anticipate what the business analyst would be providing. Listen carefully to what the questions are and provide those kind of reports, and give people the ability to change things around and adapt them in a simple and easy way. It's all very much about that. So e-commerce small and medium-sized businesses need big company analytics. They benefit from it by making more profit if they get the answers, and that's the challenge. How do you deliver that? The design challenges are in really unlocking the data by understanding the merchant needs. Probably can't emphasize that enough. We just don't ever know enough about what our customers are thinking and what they need. We need to deliver relevant insights and answers at the appropriate time. And I don't mean that time in terms of calendar time or time of day, but it's where they are in the workflow. You think about how people work. You need to understand what a merchant does in his or her day as an e-commerce merchant, and where answers need to surface. Some examples are in the listing process, for example. If I'm listing an item for sale online, it's ideal that I actually know what the average selling price of that item is on a given platform. If I'm listing on eBay, it's nice to know what that average selling price is. It's nice to have that information surfaced right when I'm in the midst of deciding what price to sell it. That should be there somewhere in the listing tool or in the listing flow. These are subtleties, but it helps people work better. And again, from the developer point of view, thinking about what's the workflow, where does the answer need to be, at what time, and give the person the information they need. Tell them what they ultimately need to do. And in terms of design challenges just for us and for everyone else working in this space, because it is so new, I really think there's something about respecting what we call the technology adoption paradigm. It's nice words, but what I'm really saying is that we just know that when we introduce new technology that's somewhat revolutionary, that the first people to embrace it tend to be very interested in complexity. They're quite comfortable with complexity, and they'll be there to help you debug your product. They're happy to work with beta. They're happy to work with flaky stuff. You have to get out there and find them and work closely with them, so that you can understand a little bit more about what they need. That's a good thing to have, because you need a lot of patient users when you're getting stuff and new things off the ground. So you take advantage of it. You don't want to panic and say, well, gee, I'm not in the mainstream yet. Frankly, your product's probably not ready for prime time yet anyway. And we know that if you look at innovation cycles of typically successful products, you'll see they come in with a lot of bells and whistles at first, and then eventually those features that are inside the product get parsed out into other products and much simpler. So the product today is something my mother couldn't use. 2 years from now, she may, and she's savvy. To succeed, though, the applications ultimately just got to be easy to use, and easy to use can be defined in a lot of different ways. So in terms of who we are, we're Advanced E-commerce Research Systems, and I just wanted to put this slide up because this is kind of what sits behind what, whoops, okay, I fail on that. Just look at the bottom here, Terapeak, all these Terapeak branded products, and there are more in the works. This is a brand that has franchise with e-commerce merchants today. As I say, in total, we have, just for Terapeak for eBay, probably north of 40, 50, 60,000 users on a daily basis now. So very, a good brand franchise within that community. But what sits behind it is a company that was founded by a couple of brothers 6 years ago now, who were themselves eBay sellers and just trying to understand, well, how do I price my stuff on eBay? What's the best time to sell? Who are my competitors? That kind of thing. What sits between that is the evolution of the company. We have 3 divisions. There's Data Partner Services, Merchant Analytics, which comprises all of the Terapeak products. Those are merchant-facing products, and that's the brand we use, and Enterprise Analytics. Data Partner Services is a service that we provide to payment providers and marketplaces where we will look after large amounts of data and provide answers, provide applications, provide API services for developers, that kind of thing. So a good example of that would be the eBay API, transaction data API that a lot of developers use is in fact hosted and run on our systems in Canada. We have 3 Tier 1 facilities, one in Toronto, one in Calgary, one in Victoria, and multiple terabytes of storage and lots of cores to handle all the data that we receive. We get that data in various ways, either by flat file or by API on a daily basis, or even hourly or minute-by-minute basis, depending. And we take that data and we prepare it and put it in our own systems and host it there. And once it's there, of course, then we can develop a number of queries around that, or APIs ourselves, the things that we need, the questions that we need to have answered. And in the case of the eBay transaction data API that is available to the developer community, all of those APIs are then exposed to the developer community, and you save the developer the trouble of having to go and get merchant data or marketplace data and host it and go through all of that heavy lifting just to develop a visualization tool. Instead, make the data available, make it available through API, and let people work on the visualization and, shall we say, the more, I won't say it's not creative, but the merchant-facing creative aspects. Obviously, data is very creative too. We talk about the enterprise analytics side of the business. If you think of these as being, the Terapeak products as being software as a service standard products, that is, you sign up, you pay $25 a month, and you get unlimited access to it, and you can customize it a bit, but it is a series of standard features that people use. There are larger merchants out there who need something that's adapted maybe a little bit more for them. They may have, for example, a different data feed. We have one customer who is working with Digital River and has a Digital River XML feed that they want to visualize, so we can add that in. That's more of a custom consulting kind of service that we provide, and we just get those requests as we go along from those more sophisticated customers. I mentioned SMBs before. SMBs really are the Terapeak bread and butter, but when you have a larger organization that's maybe doing tens of millions of dollars in e-commerce a year, they need some adaptation of that. The great thing is the APIs exist, or we can build new APIs, and visualization is an adaptation of what we have as an existing set of modules. So you have data partner services where we do work for platform whether that's a marketplace or a transaction provider. We may host a bunch of data for them, provide them with some tools or visualization that goes back into their experience. It may be branded as part of that platform. It's invisible, right, as the eBay branded transaction data API are. Similarly, with enterprise analytics, that's sort of that top tier of merchant that maybe needs a little bit more than the standard product. And then you've got merchant analytics, which is Terapeak. Now, the evolution of the company, when it started, was very much about that product there, Terapeak for eBay. And what you see is initially seeing ourselves as a product, and through the growth of the company and through the kind of queries that kept coming back from the marketplace saying, can you handle all this data? Could you provide us with some analytics? We can't do it ourselves, or we don't have the time. It would be faster if you were to leverage your skills to do that. We find that the Terapeak product group grows and also these other divisions happen. So that's a quick background on the company. The company is at its core a data company. We are very good at large amounts of data and searching it exhaustively and very, very quickly. And Pat and Corey can talk a little bit about that if you have some questions later on as far as the how. Give you a little product tour of Terapeak for PayPal. So bear with me when I log in here. Oh, great. That's right. So just to give you a sense of the user experience of getting into the product, here I've come to the paypal.com site, and I'm going to log in. And I'm going to use my demo account here. So what you're seeing is here is what a user sees when they use Terapeak for PayPal. So we've logged in. This is one of our founders, Anthony Succo. You see this is his page. And down at the bottom, say view my apps. And amazingly, there's Terapeak. So we'll get Terapeak loading. And look at the full page view. Probably just kicked Andrew off of his demo down the road, right? Okay. So what we have here is my one window on my PayPal merchant account. I can aggregate all of my merchant accounts together. I can look at them in one dashboard. I can export files to whether Excel, PDF, email them to myself. I can set goals. I send email announcements to myself when I get transactions or when I'm reaching my goals, daily sales reports, all these kinds of things are all facilitated by this. This is your business intelligence in the cloud, and we'll just give you a little tour of this and talk about some of the features that are here. You'll notice at the top here we're looking at something called dashboard, obviously. This is where, first of all, I come in, and what I can see here is my July 1st to October 26, 2010. These are some of the details on my account, what I've been doing. Sales of $3 million, net sales of $2.9 million, about 16,000 payments, this many refunds. That's what I paid in fees, that's what I paid in taxes, that's what I paid in shipping. Immediately get that view right away. I can also see a trend graph here by week and my recent transactions. That just gives you something that's just happened recently. Okay, not too bad. Set a different date range here. Let's just look at the last financial quarter, because we're going to take this out a little bit and do a few things. So go back to the servers now and pull down that data. And that's what the last quarter looked like. Now let's go into reports and just see what we can do with this. Let's hit reports. It'll give us trend in a bigger graph. Oops. Let's try that again. Is that better? So here we can see the trend, and below, details by day. And we can scroll down further and see all of those. It's exhaustive. You can go through and look at all of them. We'll get to that a little later again. Okay, so what? One of the most important things that I want to know is just give me a comparison to last year, same quarter. So again, we'll go back to the servers and pull down that data and layer one on the other. And can we see? Last year is in green. Looks better than this year. Kind of questions that you might have would be, what's the seasonality of my business? Do my best days seem to correlate? Well, there's definitely some correlation in the data as far as the peaks and valleys, but the very best days, you can see the growth here. These spikes weren't really correlated at all. What just happened? We just lost. Oh, I guess Andrew is using it. Okay. Hang on. Have to reboot that. So yeah, let's go back here. Oops. And compare to. Just do that exercise again. Okay, so we're seeing some peaks and valleys there, but we're not seeing best days in that quarter as being highly correlated at all, except in one case. We had some filters. Again, what is in the data you can see here in terms of sales, net sales, payments, price, refunds. These are all things that come back from the gateway with the data, the payments data. Filters, we can look at accounts. You notice we're aggregating 3 different accounts here. We can search for particular buyers if we have a buyer email. Anything that's in the data, we can start filtering by to build reports. Categories, currency. Let's actually go and look at currency. Do a little bit more of a deep dive on currency here. I'm not going to give you an exhaustive tour of this, but there's a few things that's worth looking at. Here are the currencies that in that period of time the business has been paid in. And as you can see, well, let's just take the comparison out. A little better. Look at a pie graph, perhaps. You can see that it's actually a fairly good distribution here. US dollars, British pounds, Canadian dollars, euros, New Zealand dollars, Australian dollars. Might be interesting to see, for example, on the US dollar side, when I go back to my reports, I may actually want to see a trend on just what's been happening in US dollar sales. So again, you can go there, it's a trend report, add a filter, currency. You can see how this works. Right. So again, just to show you the kind of ad hoc reporting and drilling in that you can do. Oops, let's go back to reports. Let's look at geography when we're talking about currency. Oops. All right. Oops. Let's say that. Sorry. Look at location. It's kind of nice to see where your transactions are coming from on a world map, and to be able to mouse over and see the kinds of revenues that you've been generating from each of those markets. You might want to drill in on a country that's fairly big in your sales, like the United States, and actually look at state by state. So we'll facilitate that as well and visualize this. So you can see we're taking data that's available in the system and building APIs around it and then visualizing it. There's sort of those steps involved here. And trying to visualize it in ways that are useful for folks. Go back out. All right. Well, why don't we stop there rather than logging back in? Any questions so far? Maybe sometime at the end. Let's go back to the presentation. Talk a little bit about what's behind it. So behind the scenes, we have a merchant sign up an authorization. As a merchant, if I want to use this tool, I have to give Terapeak the permission to actually get the data and pull it down. And in the background then, whoops, Advanced will query. Really? Let's go back. I'm going to query PayPal API and pull down some data in the forms of transactions. The other thing we do, which I haven't shown you, is that in the transactions there's often a flag. A flag will be posted if it's an eBay transaction or if it's an Etsy transaction, for example. If that's the case, then what we'll do is, as you know in transaction data, the item specifics aren't there, right? You can't see that this particular item was a 1944 Mercury, whatever, or a pair of shoes or a brand. We'll actually go and query marketplaces. In this case, we're supporting both eBay and Etsy to pull down the transaction data from their APIs and join that with the transaction data that came from PayPal. Again, the idea is, as a merchant, I don't want to have to go looking in multiple places for things. I just want to see it all in one place. You join the transaction details with the item details, and then host the data locally, build that software as a service interface for the user. And in the case of the PayPal or Terapeak for PayPal, we're actually updating, if you're logged in, we're updating your transaction data on a 6-minute basis. How we use the transaction search and get transaction details APIs in PayPal. Explained here, transaction search comes in 100 result batches. And gives that, whoops, sorry, I'm just going to learn how to use this yet, transaction type, timestamp, etc. Then also do a GTD, or get transaction details, for every one of those 100 results. And that gives you payer status, payment amounts, payment terms, transaction values. So we call the history of a merchant's account 100 transactions at a time using date ranges. Again, if you want to get more specific, we have some folks that can answer that. But this takes a significant amount of time if you have a multi-year business. And so while you're waiting as a merchant, the thing is, how long do you want to wait? You don't want to wait that long. So what we'll do is we'll actually serve up the data, the most recent data first, so you can start working with your most recent data. And in the behind the scenes, we'll do more. The merchant experience is really you log in, you confirm that you're going to hand your data to Terapeak for the purposes of using this application. As I only have a few more minutes, I'll just say a little bit more about the Terapeak products that we've also developed. There's Terapeak for eBay on the upper left, Terapeak for collectibles, which is an antiques-oriented service, which not only includes eBay data, but also data from auction houses. A product called Sector View, which allows for brand tracking. And also a product that we did for the UK's Royal Mail, which actually is a product that allows you to do direct mail by a slightly different method. That is, you say, show me the postal codes or the areas of the country where people have bought any collection of a set of goods, a mobile phone and a laptop and something else. You enter that in, and it will give you a heat map of that and help you understand the regions where you're best going to target your direct mail. So e-commerce is all about new analytics opportunities. I think the traditional IT workflow being bypassed is pretty important, and it's out there in the cloud. There's an opportunity for a service company like us to go out and get a lot of data and join it all together and give real-time feedback and a dialogue with the data that people ultimately can use to make better decisions. So I invite you to come and see Terapeak. We're in booth S22, which is right out there, and try it for yourself. And that's it. If any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now. If there are technical questions, I wonder if you guys can come up, though, and speak into the microphone, because they're taping this. So. Question?
Yeah, you said that merchants don't necessarily want to look at reports and graphs. They just want to know the answers.
Yep.
And yeah, I see a lot of reports and graphs, and there's
Yep.
a lot of customization possible. But what are you doing for the merchant that just has some general question, like, I want to make more money? Mm-hmm. Do you have any, how are you helping them to sort of uncover the answers?
I think ultimately that's where we need to go, and we're on that journey with a lot of other people in this development, sort of phase of e-commerce analytics. I think you talk about descriptive data, for example. I think that's largely descriptive data. The fact that I can visualize it and I can get it now as opposed to the end of the month is a big improvement, so I can make better decisions. But ultimately, what should I do? I think then you have to layer on other things. So, for example, we'd be foolish not to be looking to things like, well, predictive algorithms, for example. Can you predict what's going to happen? Should I anticipate something? If I have a best day of the year coming up, I should probably be anticipating that. I should get some reminders to get more inventory in, or these kinds of things. Halloween's coming, right? Or Christmas is coming. So the answer is we're working toward that. But it's a series of steps, and each step that you take, you need a feedback loop with users. And we have over 1,000 beta users right now for this product, and we're learning a tremendous amount. Because then you slice them up and you put them into different buckets, and you see, retailers, big retailers, small, that sort of thing. Each one has its own needs. Question? One client where what, sorry?
You mentioned one of the 4 scenarios towards the end of your presentation where it dealt with branding.
Right.
So my question is kind of the difference between performance indicators versus behavioral indicators, and I assume branding you're including bricks as well as clicks, in other words, offline, and how you're bringing offline experiences into data.
In this particular product, we're focusing on a rollout in e-commerce right now. There's no reason why bricks data can't be integrated, and if it can be tagged, then you're in business, especially if it can be tagged not only with where it came from, but the transaction details. One of the things I didn't show you is, in addition to behind the scenes going and getting information about what the product is from the marketplaces, I mean, that can be done in a number of different ways, even from a person's own site, and we've got ways of doing that. But in addition to that, probably what you want to do is you want to have things like brand, and you also want to aggregate. A natural future extension of this is to say, when you've got hundreds of thousands of merchants using a product like this, invite them to share their data on an aggregated basis with everyone else. So then they can see things like, well, how's Nike doing versus New Balance? Right. Those are the kind of questions that people want as well. So benchmarking, both of business in terms of my trends, are they going up or down relative to my cohort? And also benchmarking of brands and products against each other. It's kind of interesting. So it's also a natural thing to be moving toward. Yeah. Not all available today. Question?
Do you have anything specific for digital content reporting? First question. Second question is, if you have a marketplace, how, like the Etsy integration, how would we integrate into that so we could provide more details in a report through your system?
So for digital items, for example, it could be even micropayments or in-game advertising, that kind of thing? Or?
Yeah, well, specifically we're concerned with conversion rates to purchase from the offer presentation through the buy pipeline to the exit. And so we want to look at things like that. Do you have anything specific for showing optimizations if you do A/B testing, for example? And I think one of the things that really differentiates digital from physical goods is the lack of a shipping address and therefore geolocation information, which might come from IP address versus an address, a shipping address. Is there anything specific in your platform for that?
At this time, there's nothing specific in it, but I guess it's all possible. I mean, again, we find ourselves, as a company grows, being approached by different companies who are in different spaces, and that's actually one question that we've had, is can you adapt this kind of visualization for something that we can use? It may be for something such as, in-game advertising or something, or could be, sales of games, micropayments, give those developers some kind of a feedback loop to see, as you say, get some geotagging, find out where they're selling, who's converting. We have gender information and things like that in here as well, which we infer based on if you can give us a first name. It's one thing I should have said right at the beginning of this, which is very important. There's no personally identifiable information being used here. That's quite significant. We don't want it. We don't need it. If you give us a first name and give us a zip code someplace, in terms of a shipping address, we can kind of do the rest based on that. And privacy is a huge issue right now and a growing one. So for a lot of the work that we do, we don't actually need that to expose trends. I'm thinking more of marketplaces here especially. But, there it is. Any other questions? Okay. Well, on behalf of Advanced E-commerce Research Systems and Terapeak, thanks very much for coming today and listening to the presentation. If you have any questions, we're around. Thanks.